to the drawing process. This is us now in Unit 4, and we're looking at the pen tool and preparing to do a character tracing in this spa right here. Now there's an exercise which precedes that right here with just some basic drawing challenges. There's 9 in total. It goes all the way from drawing a simple triangle to creating this one-legged rooster. Now, in order to do that, you're going to need to download this pen shapes template, this JPEG file. And there's also an Illustrator file that shows how these elements were illustrated. So they're clickable and you can see where all the anchor points are and where all the direction lines are. And those terms will mean a little something more to you after this demo. So first I need to download that JPEG, and you can control click on that and save that image, or right click, there it is, control save image as, and just use pen shapes, save it down to the desktop, and then I can bring it into Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to create a new file. It's going to be letter size, and it's going to be portrait orientation. Click Create, it generates the page. The next thing is bringing in the outside image as a drawing reference. We do that by using the File menu and choosing Place. There it is on my desktop. I click Place, and if I just click down, it brings it in at full size. However, if I go to Place, try it again, this time just dragging, I can determine its sizing. Now once you have it there, you'll notice that it's on the default layer 1. What I'm going to do is double click on layer 1, and I'm going to use this exclusively for holding my reference image. And I do this by converting it into what's called a template. And automatically it dims the image to a specified percentage. In this case, 50% is the default. And I'm okay with that. Notice the image in the background will dim. It's kind of mimicking tracing paper. You'll also notice that the icon here changes from being an eye to this square arrangement, indicating that it's now a template. It's also locked down. Notice the little pencil with the no-go icon below it. So that means I need to create a new layer on which I'm going to draw, and it's automatically assigned the color red to that layer. Again, by double-clicking, and you get the options. You could change that to any color you wanted. So we're going to begin by using the pen tool, and these things are located here. Now you may have set it up as a single column, but if you expand here, it makes it into a double column, which I prefer. Remember, Window, Workspace, Essentials, Classic, so that everything looks the same. And if you've got a lot of windows open, you can always go to Reset Essentials Classic, and it just tidies up your workspace and resets it to its default state. I'm referencing the Essentials Classic workspace. So here's our pen tool right here, and as with any tool that has a little tab in the bottom right, when you click on it, it expands a tray full of other tools. And if I click here on the handle of the tray, it detaches and allows me to move it over into the working area. We're also going to be using this one. It's the Shaper tool. If you open that tray and detach it, we're going to be using the pencil and the smoother and possibly the eraser tool as well. We'll also be using primary shapes in this exercise. So I pop this open, detach it, and just have them there at the ready. So you'll notice spacebar gives us our grabber hand and allows us to move things around on the page. And we're starting with a very basic closed shape, the triangle. I choose the pen tool. We also have the add anchor point, subtract anchor point, and the anchor point tool. This can convert anchor points from one mode to another, namely from being a straight line associated anchor point to a curved line associated anchor point. Again, we'll learn more of that as we progress. So with the pen tool, you perform a click either with your mouse or a click down onto your trackpad or a tap if you're using a stylus arrangement. And you'll notice it puts down this square. That's called an anchor point. And that's the first construct in creating paths. You'll notice that this path is following my cursor. And it won't establish that path until I click down again. And you'll notice that it's generated a permanent path between these two anchor points. And now I can come over here and click. And then finally, you'll notice as I go over there that we see the closure icon, just a circle, appear below the pen tool, indicating that if I click down now, it will generate a closed shape. There we go. And I'm just going to zoom out. The default right now is using a white fill with a black stroke. I'm going to choose the fill and say none. So there's no fill. And I'm going to choose a stroke, and I'm just going to choose a dark green color for the stroke. Well, maybe a forest green color. And now that I'm finished, I'm able to continue drawing other shapes. Another way in which to end the drawing is to hold the Command key down, and you'll notice that it's giving me what's called my direct selection tool. That tool is found at the top right-hand side of your toolbox. It's the white arrow. The black arrow is the selection tool. That selects all the points along a path and gives you this, what is called a bounding box, which makes the element scalable, rotatable by the corners, and so on. So, no matter what tool you're on, if you click on a blank area of the screen, it terminates the interaction with that object. It's no longer active. Now, go to this next shape. It's a very different kettle of fish because you'll notice it's curves. When we generate curves, we use a dragging motion. And when we drag, it establishes the anchor point, just like in the straight line, but it also drags out these constructs with the round handles on them. These are direction lines or direction handles. Where do you drag them to? Well, if I'm going to be drawing in this direction, upward and to the right, you want to hug the edge of the curve, and you want the handle to be roughly a third the length of the section that you're going to create. And so this is too far out, that's too far in, that's just about right, and that's 1/3 of the length. Now, in this case, it wants to create what looks like a U shape right here, but if you look a little bit further, there's kind of an S shape going on there. And so to create an S curve, I'm just going to hold down and drag, and you'll notice that it's created a bit of an S shape there. Spacebar to get the grabber hand and move the page. And it wants to keep drawing, but temporarily, if I hold down my Command key, it gives me my direct selection tool. And that allows me to make little adjustments on the fly. And so you'll notice I'm just adjusting the curvature here. And again, there you can see it matches that curve. I'm going to click on a blank area, so I've deselected it. You can see the green curvature here. And if I click on it, you'll notice what's unique about an S-curve is that the direction lines that create it move in opposite directions. So the one on the left-hand side of this segment here is pulling the path up and to the left. And on the right-hand side, this direction line is pulling the path down. So S-curves, the direction lines or handles are moving in opposite directions. Now, whenever you have a sharp change in direction, that's a sharp transition, you need to have separate direction lines or handles. You'll notice right now as I'm rotating these things that there's an equal and opposite one rotating. That's the direction handle that's going to be used for the next section of the curve that I create. And the problem with that is that that handle that I'm dragging wants to pull this next section of the curve up. And I don't want it going up, I want it moving down the way. So in order to create an abrupt change in direction, you need to use the Option key. And then if I go over top of this, I can break it. You see? It's no longer in line with its opposite. We can now hinge it, and it needs to drag down here because I'm trying to create this lower S shape. So if I drag down, that's too far out, too far in. It just has to follow the curve as it comes out of that anchor point. And again, I'm coming over here to finish it. Notice as I move over the end point, we see the closure icon appear. That circle tells us that we're going to create a closed shape. Now again, because this is an abrupt transition point, I'm going to hold down the Option key, and that allows me to generate an independently rotating direction line. And now with the Command key still down, I can make individual subtle changes in shape. And there we have it. Command, click down, and the Option key, by the way, is the Alt key on the PC. So there we have that shape. Now, just as a little segue, I should point out the different types of curves. So if I drag, I move over here, and then I drag, I create a U-curve. Command key, click on that path, click down, click again. You'll see in a U-curve, the direction handles move in the same direction, whether up or whether they're moving down the way. Okay? In the case of an S-curve, the direction lines are moving in opposite directions to generate the S. There's another one that's sort of a transitional path. I'm going to drag here, and I'm going to move over here and click. Command, click down in a blank area to deselect, and let's Command, click on this again. And you can see that in this case, this path behaves like a curve on the left-hand side, but because I clicked down on the right-hand side, it has no control handle for curvature. So it's half curve, half straight line. This is called a delta curve. It's like the wing of a plane. And of course, I can start with a click and end with a curve, and that's just a reverse delta. It's a straight line on the left and a curve on the right. So we've seen U-curves, we've seen S-curves, and when we're trying to transition one curve to the next, I'm going to make another curve here. This is a U-curve going to an S-curve. If I hold the Command key down and I flip this the other way, you'll notice we're now going from a U-curve to a U-curve. There's the first section. with the U-curve going up the way, and there's the second section with the U-curve going down the way. Whether it's going from an S to a U or a U to a U, Illustrator always wants to make sure that there's a smooth transition between the segments of curves. And the reason for that is, well, if you think the analogy of a race car track, you know, like the kind you assemble for toy race cars, or a train track for a toy train, if you think of moving from this section of the track into this section, you want to make sure that there are no abrupt changes that would cause the train to derail. So you'll notice as you come through this point where they both join that they're both lining up. This section of track is lined up in this direction, and this section of track is lined up in this direction, adding together to give a really smooth, straight line integration between one section and the next. However, sometimes you don't want a nice smooth transition, you want a very abrupt transition. And the problem is managing that. So what if I wanted one hump here and another hump here, like a big letter M? Well, if I use the Command key to get to my direct selection tool, and I move that, notice that it's joined end to end in the anchor point. Both of those direction lines are fused together at the anchor point. So if you rotate one, it causes an equal and opposite change in the other segment that shares that anchor point with it. Likewise, if I try and move this, it's destabilizing the one that it shares this anchor point with. So how do you make them independent? The Option key. So I'm holding down the Command key, then I hold the Option key down, and I can break that. Another way of doing it is using this tool over here. It's called the Anchor Point tool. And if I go over that, it allows me to essentially hinge and have this thing move up the way such that we have a very abrupt transition. So imagine a train flying down here, then all of a sudden 180 degrees, and it's basically moving back in the same direction. That'd be disastrous in real life. So you can see the two direction lines here originally were aligned like this. Now they're unaligned and they're moving basically up the way in the same direction, causing a very abrupt change in direction. So as you're drawing with the pen tool, you can go right over top of that and you can try to drag it, but it's causing that equal and opposite reaction. You need to go over there, hold down the Option key, and drag out a brand new direction line. Instead of moving this way, we say move up the way. And you can see how it's going to pull that second segment of the curve up the way instead. Again, moving over this, hold down the Option key, and drag up again an independently rotating direction line. If I use the Command key, you can see I can independently manipulate these without causing an equal reaction in the segment that shares this anchor point. So that's creating abrupt transitions between curve segments. Now, when I look at this, I could create it very simply. I look at this, and that's a U-curve. So the mental process is deconstructive in nature. You look at a complex shape, you necessarily have to break it down into the shapes that you know how to draw. I know how to draw S-curves, delta curves, U-curves, and I know how to create basic objects like rectangles, ellipses, polygons, and so on. If you know how to draw these basic things, you can make virtually any shape. You can illustrate anything. It's just being able to see with your own eyes and your imagination how a complex object is really a construct of simpler objects. So on one hand, this could look like two U-curves. So I'm going to start my drawing here. I'm going to draw the outer section first. That's stretched out too far. That's too far in. It needs to hug the edge of that curve. Another rule is making it, like I said, about a third the length of whatever you think that total length is. Now I come down to this point and I start dragging out another direction line here. And I may have to make some adjustments. Command key, grab this, make a slight adjustment. Still got the command key down, and I'm just tweaking this a little bit at a time. You can see. There you have it. Really, ideally, these things should be the same length and the same angle if we're looking for exactitude. Now, this next section of the curve wants to bow out to the right because Illustrator always wants to make sure as you move from one segment to the other that the direction lines are parallel and aligned. Well, we don't want that. So remember, to break that relationship, you hold the Option key down, and now you can drag out a brand new direction line or handle. About a third of the length. That's too far out. That's too far in. Sorry, that's too far in. That's too far out. Just hug the curve. About a third of the length. Come over here. Again, you see the little circle indicating we're going to create a closed path. And if I hold down the Option key, I can drag that out. Try my best. There. Hold down. Still holding down that Option key. This is allowing me to make subtle little changes, and there I have drawn it. Now there's another way in which to do that. That's using the pen tool. I could try and draw it with a pencil tool. Accuracy obviously would be an issue. But another way is shape-on-shape interactions. I know that this is roughly an ellipse, and its center would probably be around here somewhere. And if I hold that down, remember the Option key also draws shapes from their centers. And I'm more or less going to try and get that about the right size if I can. Just going to move it over to here. That's pretty close. So I've got that circle. Now I'm just going to copy that. Could be Command C or Control C in the PC, and Command V or Control V on the PC to paste, or even simpler, hold down the Option key and drag. Option dragging creates copies. The Option key has a lot of functions. Now that I've created these two, I can select them and then use this tool here, the Shape Builder. And now remember, if you drag across things, it unites those shapes. Command Z to undo. Or if you hold down the Option key, notice the minus sign underneath the cursor, and if I drag, I subtract those shapes. Now, this has taken more points. To draw this same shape, I did it on my own using 2 points, joining really 2 U-curves. You'll see here, instead, it has used 6 points in total. So my drawing was a lot more efficient in this case. But I know that this is perfectly symmetrical, doing it this way. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, less efficient. Now here, this is a more organic shape. Where you're dealing with human-made objects, there's an expectation of lots of symmetry and exactitude. With shapes that come out of nature, let's just say this is an apricot or a plum or perhaps a peach or something, things don't need to be perfectly symmetrical. In fact, it would be a freak of nature if it were. And so we are more forgiving in terms of accurate representation. I'm going to use the pencil tool for this. So here's our pencil tool. I'm going to start more or less at the center here, and I'm going to start drawing. And if it gets out of whack, I can go to my eraser tool and erase back to that point. Then I can continue with my pencil tool. I can double click my pencil tool to look at the options. I want to make it more smooth. So that way you can see it's smoothing the shapes out for me. And then I'm going to draw to about here. If need be, I can use that smooth tool. I'm going to smooth it, and then my direct selection tool, select an individual point, and just tweak it a little bit. What I want to do now is, with the direct selection tool, just make a marquee by dragging. So I've selected those two endpoints. I want to make sure that they're parallel. So I can use the Command Center Control panel up here and make sure that they both align horizontally on this axis. So I know that they're right above one another. So I can use alignment there to really help me. Now that I've done that, I can reflect it. And I'll show you two different methods for doing that. The first method, I need to select it with the selection tool so it's all selected. And then, again, just with the Option key, with the Option key held down, I'll just make a copy. Let's just zoom in, take a closer look. There's my copy, and I just need to flip that copy. Move it into position. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. It looks to me like we're pretty close. Maybe I just need to stretch that up a little bit. And there we go. They're more or less aligned. Now, I'm going to use the direct selection tool. Why? Because I only want to select individual points. I want to select these 2 points. So this one, well, there's 2 points there. They're both selected. And I want to make sure they're perfectly aligned. I can do it this way, align horizontally and align vertically. They're both right over top of one another. Now I can say Object, Path, Join. They're now fused into a single point. There's no longer 2 points there. The other way I can do it, select them both, and now I can use the Object, Path, Average. And I can say average them on both the vertical and the horizontal axes. They're now coterminal. They're exactly over one another. And now I can use Command J. That's the shortcut. It's now fused it into a single point. So we move on to the pepper. Oh, sorry, we're on the heart. And again, I can use reflection in that case. That can be very handy. I wonder if that's a delta curve. So I'll start by clicking there, and I'll come up here and I'll start to drag. And that's too far out, that's too far in. It hugs the edge of that curve. But you'll notice, I hit Command key to get my direct selection tool. No matter where I move this curve, I'll never get it to match. So this is in fact not a delta curve. It's actually a U-curve. So I'll drag out a direction line here at the bottom instead of clicking. That's too far out, that's too far in. It just should hug the edge of the curve. It's called a tangent in mathematics. That's actually how the mathematical formula for these curves is computed by Illustrator using what we call Bezier curves. Again, Command key to get the direct selection tool. Just make slight adjustments so it matches. There you have it. That seems to be pretty good. Again, Command key to select these two endpoints. Make sure they're aligned on that horizontal axis. Whoop, that's no good. What happened there? Make sure I have both those points selected. They're aligned on their horizontal axis. It's weird how it got displaced like that. Now I can reflect it. I'm going to show you another way in which to reflect. Remember, we did it once by just option dragging the section and flipping the section. This time I'm going to use the reflect tool. So we need to make sure that everything's selected. So we use the select tool. If I used my direct selection tool and I click, these points aren't actually selected. They're only indicated for position. Notice when I click on a point, it's now selected. And if I hold the Shift key down, I've selected the second point. So one way to ensure that is when you click with the selection tool, everything is selected. Now I'm going to reflect it. And the first thing I'm going to do is put a reference pin in right here. And if I hold the Option key down, I'll do it without the Option key at first. I'll click there as my reference point. Now you'll notice as I'm rotating that mirror, it's showing how it's going to reflect it. And if I held down the Option key, I know that it would reflect a copy. That's one way of doing it. The other way is using, smooth these up. The other way is using the Option key to get a menu. So if I click with the Option key, I can say flip it through the vertical axis as a copy. And in fact, the reference image isn't as symmetrical as we would have believed. One side is actually slightly larger, thus reflecting the reality of the heart. Now, these lines, again, these points, aren't exactly coterminal, so we select them, the direct selection tool, and then remember there were two methods, object, path, average on both axes. Okay, now we know if we do Command J or object, path, join, that they're fused into a single point. Same thing again down at the bottom, only I'll do it this way, average them on the horizontal axis, average them on the vertical axis, and then Command J, boom. We've created that using 2 points. Now with the apple, you might want to do that with the pencil tool. It's an organic shape, so who cares if you don't draw it exactly? No one's going to be there saying, hey, that's not the apple. But I'm going to try and do a better job than that. I'm going to erase from here to here, and maybe a little bit more there. Pick it up where I left off, back to the pencil tool. Just do it a little bit slower and more methodically. Notice because I have a high degree of smoothness set, remember double clicking on the pen tool, you can set it up to be really smooth. And then we get to here. Kind of getting a little wonky. Use my smoothing tool. Smooth it all out. Again, remember, Notice when we smooth, it reduces the number of points. Then come back in here. I'm going to change direction and go here. Good. And then up here and finish it off. Again, a little bit of smoothing, perhaps. Again, Command key, move individual points if need be. They're all selected, so I need to deselect them. Command key, click down, select an individual point, and you can make some moves. Now at this point, if I got too many, I could also use the Subtract Anchor Point tool right there. And I could just remove that. And then that would allow me, if I hold the Command key down, I could just move that there, add a little bit of curvature in there. You can see the curve handles there. And there we go. You can make those kinds of adjustments on the fly. Here, it's just two U curves. Again, I could use reflection if I wanted to. So I'll use my pen tool. That's too far out, that's too far in. Just hug the curve about 1/3 the length. Get to here. Boom. Or just hold the Option key down and move the direction line here. That's too far in, too far out. Just hugging the curve and back to here. Hold the Option key down to kind of finish it. Command key to get the direct selection tool, and you can just change the location of things. Do little tweaks on the fly. Now, I could have approached this apple in a very different way. A deconstruction of curves. So to let you know the mental process that needs to occur, you need to look at this and determine what is this apple path comprised of in terms of simple basic curves. Well, there's a U curve there. That looks like it could be an S curve down there, and possibly another S curve, a big U curve, another S curve here. So let's try. I'm going to draw from here. I drag out, that's too far in. Just hug the curve. And then come down to here. Again, I've created that first U curve. It's a vertical U curve. Nonetheless, it's a U curve. Look at the handles moving in the same direction. The next thing I'm going to do is create an S curve. Now you'll notice right here on the corner that ordinarily that curve wants to pull to the right to ensure a smooth transition to the next section. But I don't want that. I need an abrupt transition. So I'll go back over there, hold down the Option key, and that allows me to create a new direction line. Pulling this way, hugging the curve, not in here, not out here, hugging the curve. And now I can come over here, and I've created my S curve. Hold the Command key to get back to the direct selection tool, make an adjustment on the fly. Boom, there's my S curve. Command, click on a blank area. Let's click on that S curve. Notice handle's moving this way, and this handle's moving this way. S curves have handles moving in opposite directions. Now this is just really a U curve. So again, I'll follow that, and I want a smooth transition. It's not an abrupt transition. If you look at it, you see, there's no sharp transition. As we go from this section to the next, they're nice and aligned right here. So maintain that. I don't need to hold the Option key down. And then I come up to about here. And I don't need to worry if I don't get it right away. Hold the Command key down and just make a slight adjustment to the curvature. Again, this could be another S curve in this section. Hold the Command key down and just adjust. On the fly. We're making adjustments as we draw. I'm looking at this wondering if in fact I can get this to happen. It's seeming a little bit difficult to get that, so I'm going to move that up a little bit. And I'll adjust this curvature, adjust this S curve, and that's a lot closer, I'm finding. There we go. And obviously, as you adjust one, it's causing repercussions in the other section. And so sometimes you just need to be patient in order to make all the necessary adjustments. There. I'm okay with that. And our last section is just a U-curve. And it ends with an abrupt transition. It ends at a point right here. So remember, whenever you have abrupt transitions, hold down that Option key to allow for an independently rotating direction line. And again, I'll just shorten that down a little bit. And maybe stretch that out a bit there. There you have it, another approach to drawing that apple. Fewer points are being used. It's a more deliberate approach. Now, the pepper, the same thing. We're doing a breakdown. That's a U-curve with an abrupt transition to a big S curve. And then it looks like another U-curve there, and then a very slow, lazy S curve to a U-curve, and then a straight line. So let's just start at the top. Straight line, click. Click. I've created a straight line. Now I need to start making a curve. So I need to go back over this point and drag out a direction line to create my very shallow U-curve here. Now we're transitioning from a curve to another curve. Notice that it wants to pull the curve down. This direction line needs to be changed. So move over, hold the Option key down, and drag out that new direction line. Now where are we going? That looks like it's a big, lazy U-curve. Drag that out there. Again, Command key, and I'll just tweak that. Okay, again, this looks like it could be an S curve right here. So I'm just going to drop that in there, put the little S bend in there. Look at that. It's working quite nicely. Now for this little section, this is too extreme. So I just want to adjust that down a little bit. Whoops. Command key, shorten it down. So we just have a little tiny U-curve right there. And then that's potentially another S-curve right there. I'm just going to start here, dragging. And come up to here. You can see there's the S. Hold the Command key down, just adjust this piece now. And adjust this. I've got that shape. And now, you see how it wants to pull the curve down and to the right because of this direction line. I need to hold down the Option key and create that abrupt transition. And again, this is a final U-curve. And you'll notice right here that it's going to close because of that circle. And I'll just hold down the Option key and just pull out a little bit of curvature to finish that U-curve. Alright, now we've got the bottom. Sometimes it's not always about the pen tool. Sometimes it's about the interaction of shapes. In this case, I've chosen an ellipse. And I'm kind of figuring out where its center is. There are measurement tools that you could use. I've been using this for long enough that I can eyeball it. I just created a circle for the top of the bottle. Command 0. Oh, what happened there? And now I want to move in and create a rectangle. Choose the rectangle tool, move in here. I just want to check them. So command. You can see that they're not quite lined up. I could try that. Use the selection tool. Select them. Use the alignment function. Here it is down here. Align them on their centers. Maybe I need to make this a little bit smaller so it maxes out. That looks pretty good right there. So I'm going to see what that does. In fact, I could just select this circle just to show you. I can see what the width is. 44.4 repeating. I'm just going to copy that value for the width of that. Then if I select my rectangle, I want to make it exactly the same. Give it the same width. And now I know these two things are exactly the same. Same width. Just going to pull this down just a wee bit more. Now, if I fuse these two things together, it should be a nice smooth transition. With the selection tool, select both of them, choose a shape builder, drag across them. I fused it into a single object. Likewise, another rectangle. It's going to come in here. With the selection tool, select those two objects. With the shape builder tool, drag across them. I fused the shapes together. Okay, now near the top, we're dealing with another ellipse. Maybe it centers around here. I'm just going to guesstimate it. Option to draw from center. Kind of try and get that curvature right if I can. Maybe make a little adjustment there. Nudge it over a little bit. That looks pretty good right there. I want to make sure they're aligned. So I select the two elements. And then if I look at alignment, align them on their centers. They're both perfectly aligned. And use my selection tool to select both those objects. Choose the shape builder tool, drag across them, and they've united. The final thing is just throwing a rectangle in there, and again selecting the two objects, and this time shape builder with the option key, and drag across the things you want to remove, and as you can see, shape number 8 has been accomplished. Now we want to move to the rooster, and the rooster's the same thing. It's very complex, but it's not. It's really just a collection of curves. In this case, for the most part, as far as I can see, they're all just U-curves with very abrupt changes in direction in each one. Now, I don't want to give it all to you because this is a bit of a challenge. But what I want you to do is finish the rooster. But just to show you, get you started with it, I'm just going to start here. And I'm going to draw that as a U-curve. And then it transitions abruptly, so think option key, to this U-curve. Abrupt transition to this U-curve, abrupt transition, U-curve, 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 and so on. So let's just take a look at how that works. That's too far out, that's too far in. Let it hug the curve, about 1/3 of the length, and we come to here, right? Now it's an abrupt transition. So That necessitates Option key. Drag the new direction line. That's too far out, too far in. Hug the little piece of curve there. Drag a little bit of curvature. And again, Option key. Drag the new handle out. That's too far out, that's too far in. Hug that little section of curve right there. Then again, a little bit of curvature. Option key because we're changing direction and we're coming down the way now. And then we get to there. And again, see how that handle here is pulling the curve down? We don't need it. Hold the Option key down and reestablish it along this, right here. And again, Option key, and create that next little section of curve. Option key, draw this next little section of curve. Option key, a slightly larger curve right here. And it's nothing but a series of U-curves. And at this point, once I'm finished, I can get rid of the template. I'll unlock it. Then I can just hit the delete key in the layers panel. And now you can see all of the elements which have been drawn. That's an exercise that I'd like you to try. It gets you in the habit of mind of looking at things and deconstructing them into basic elemental shapes or curves, simple curves like delta curves, U curves, and S curves. Do that in preparation for the next challenge, which is the assignment, and that's drawing from a visual reference your favorite cartoon character. And there should be enough practice here for you just to get up to speed and be ready to do that assignment. Thank you.